Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Evolving Democracy. I'm Christy Johnson here with my good friend Joni Miller. And today we're talking about the question, would it take a miracle? So today we're going to be exploring what miracles are, not in a biblical sense, but in just the sense of, what can happen that's realistic and what can happen that expands our expectations of life and so on. So we're going to play with that today. And who doesn't love a good miracle, right? Joni?
Yeah, so when we think about miracles, we're often thinking that this is something that is unexplainable or that comes from something beyond us. But if you think about something like, an actress became an overnight sensation, it's never that way. It's years of hard work. A comedian is doing gigs in dive bars for years before they become big. So sometimes what we might think is a miracle is really just the end result of a lot of hard work.
Yeah, persistence is so much of what we're dealing with right now because every time some crazy news headline comes through that can knock you off balance, coming back to, okay, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And this accumulation of these little actions can create the appearance of a miracle, which really is maybe not a miracle at all. I mean, it's interesting to play with. Yes, it could be a miracle and that would be fun and exciting. And also, how do we make a miracle happen? It makes me think about the law of attraction. For those who aren't familiar with it, it has to do with leaning into the feeling of what it is you want to have happen. But I love to say the law of attraction includes the word action. Because if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. I can sit on my front porch and expect a Porsche to come through. But if I work towards getting that, that's going to be more likely to be successful.
And we have talked so often about how sometimes a small action, something that we think is it doesn't make a difference, could be the one thing that makes a difference. The right person hears and it sparks something in them for them to also take action. So what we're encouraging in the miracle is that we can be the miracle. We can be the miracle every time we speak, every time we protest, every time we share what we think, share what we know, share the stories that might not be breaking through in other places. We can become the miracle.
And I love that because this is how we create something different. Joanne Freeman was talking about when people spoke up, things changed. Like when the Stars and Stripes reported about the USS Abraham Lincoln, and then families started speaking up, people started hearing about it. Like it's not something I would ever hear about on a random day. But as people start talking about it, and more people talk about it, and more people talk about it, it becomes the sort of auto-catalytic building thing that allows more people to become aware of what's going on. Because so many people still, which is sort of shocking, seem to be in the dark about a lot of things. So the more of us that speak up, eventually it's going to be like, well, everyone's talking about whatever the thing is. Like, oh, good, because the more people that talk about it, the more people they hear, the more this so-called miracle of shifting, changing, evolving, growing, and making a better future can come to us.
Yeah, and so much of what we're seeing, the wins that the Democratic Party is having in in special elections, uh, has been the result of grassroots organizing. That neighbors are talking to neighbors, that canvassers are going out, and so it is that connection that can create change, and connection can be the miracle.
I actually watched I don't know exactly what you would call it. It was sort of a news item, I guess you would say, on YouTube about Abdul El Sayed. And he was talking to constituents and asking, they were having sort of a mini town hall, if you will, like about 10 or 15 people talking about what his positions are and so on. And he mentioned that he had met with people 450 times, which of course, you cannot meet with everyone in Michigan. He's now the Democratic nominee for the Senate in Michigan. Of course, you can't meet with every Michigander, But when you meet with some and then they go on to say something, and just even like me, someone in Arizona watching this video, which was recorded before he got the nomination, this was when he was still in the Democratic primary with Haley Stevens, then that sort of the word sort of spreads and becomes something that more people understand what's true instead of taking some sound bite from some biased news source that wants them to say, "Oh, he's got an Arabian name," and that's not okay with us. So it's a way of sort of being, I don't know, countercultural or something, sort of being revolutionary to actually bring the truth forward, which is a funny thing to think about, that facts are now radical.
Oh, yeah. But that's why we and so many other people advocate, know what you're talking about. Do not spread disinformation inadvertently. Go to the sources so that when you speak, you are speaking with that authority of truth, that sword of truth.
Right, cutting through what isn't true and doesn't serve us is a powerful, I don't even know if resistance is the right word, but it's a powerful mechanism for reestablishing some sort of normalcy, reestablishing some sort of decency, reestablishing trust. Because when we get things from all kinds of sources and start getting more and more suspicious, like, is that real? Is that a scam? Is that AI? Mm, then we can start like thinking everything is nonsense and just not trusting anything. So
Mm.
as people do things from valid sources, just like the polling, I heard this week that there was fake polling done, that people just gave the kind of data that their clients wanted. Well, you're not a pollster then, you're just a big old liar. Like anybody could do that. Excuse me, I spit. It's now coming to the point where integrity and honesty and being truthful and being trustworthy really speaks to people. They're sick of the political BS nonsense, misleading, misdirecting. None of us likes that in our normal lives. Why would we like that in our political lives? And, with politicians, it's just not digestible for most of us. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid entirely.
Well, and if you think about your own life, just taking this in a little different direction right now and going back to what is a miracle. Sometimes, if you think back of your own history, there have been points where you go, how did that happen? How did this right person come into my life? Christy and I, it was so random. It was so random and not
Was
random
it?
that we connected. And yet it feels like we're supposed to be together. My husband, that was a miracle. It's like holding a newborn baby. That's a miracle. There are things that we don't understand how it works. How is life created? This is incredible. And last night, I'm going through some very challenging family anxious stuff going on. And last night we were opening the windows because it was a unseasonably cool night here in Maryland. And I was up in the loft and I was just standing there looking out because the moon was there. I could hear the cicadas. And I thought, my heart opened and I thought, this is a miracle. The nature is a miracle. Standing by the ocean, there are these moments of awe that makes you realize that there is something bigger than us. And not defining what that bigger is, but there is more that we don't know than what we do about anything. And so, who's to say that one of these seemingly random connections isn't the one that sets off a chain of events? But as Christy said, it takes action, it takes some sort of movement that sets the chain in motion, that is the impetus that sets the line of cards in a playing deck toppling over. something has to happen first, and we can be that something that happens.
And lather, rinse, repeat. Like we can keep doing that. It's not relying on the one thing. It's relying on the many, many, many things. The propagation of energy and commitment and action and so on. That's going to make a difference. You know, I saw someone here and I saw a Facebook post for a protest here in Tucson where there were only 2 people on the corner. And the people in the comments were like, oh, look at that. That's nothing, blah, 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 blah. It's still 2 people. And it happened to be on a you know, it's a nighttime protest, people are at work, so on and so forth. Like maybe it wasn't well publicized, whatever. Like it's still people saying what matters to them. And every drip, every drop, every bucket contributes to this being a major shift from us going, well, it's probably going to be okay. Like I probably, this is so me. I was like, this is awful in term one of he who shall not be named. And then I was like, oh dear. Like, I don't know if I can do anything that'll shift the needle at all, but I would not feel comfortable not doing it. This has to be my entry point. This has to be the thing that says, look, you got to go. You got to go do something. You've got to move into the fray. You've got to start being better informed and start speaking up. And honestly, that's kind of a miracle right there. Because I was very committed to like, just make it stop. It wasn't stopping. It was accelerating. That's the thing. I feel sorry for like Joanne Freeman and Heather Cox Richardson because they're like, for years we've been warning people that this was coming for years, for years, for years. And so on one hand, it's like, yay, people are waking up. But also, oh, how many hours, how many breaths, how many books, how many statements were made before they got to this point. But also they established themselves as experts, as having a voice, as being a resource. So to me, that wasn't wasted because it built them to where they are now. And now they can really help lead us and inform us from historian perspective. Joanne Freeman always talks about historian brain. From their historian brains, they can inform us how they interpret what they're seeing, the patterns they're observing, and how to help us create that miracle. They don't use that word, but that's what they're up to. That's my perspective.
Well, and the things they do talk about are what I would consider some of the miracles that have come out of this. They talk about community and the communities that have been created, the new relationships that have emerged, the new voices that may have been silenced in the past that are coming to the forefront. Those are all miracles. So they talk about community, and even though they're historians, they do talk about love. They talk about integrity. They talk about these things that Christy and I would say are soul expanding. This sense of that there is something greater in us, and something greater for this nation and for the world.
And I don't think, again, you know, going back to energy loss and energy gain, it sort of reminds me of my thermodynamics days. Energy here, you know, if we invest in our fellow community members, if we invest in them with our time, energy, and money, it's not lost. It's an investment, again, of putting something where our values are, which then reverberates throughout the community. You know, if you had no one helping no one, you know, anyone else, things would just, first of all, they wouldn't feel good, but there would be so much trauma. I mean, things are bad enough, but things would be so much worse if people didn't go, I see something's wrong here. I see something needs to be adjusted here. I see something I can do here. And it could be something small or it could be something very significant. There have been studies about people who have less money actually are more generous with their money than people who have more, which is very interesting. I mean, someone who has less affluence might be more keenly aware of what it's like to struggle and have more empathy. That's another very strong contributor, if you will, is to share from an empathetic perspective and really say, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, I know you're going through difficulty. Here's something I can do to help. Or maybe helping is just listening.
And sometimes if you see something and don't feel like you can personally do something by sharing what it is you see. You could be creating that ripple effect that we talk about so often. That when you listen to your own yourself, you know yourself, you listen to your own guidance, and you know what you can do. Push through, push through a little bit through that discomfort, but sometimes things are beyond your capability. But speaking up and sharing what you see, what you know, what you hear, especially if it's first person narration, that's very powerful.
And the corollary, which we talk about here frequently, is what do you want? It's not just what you don't want, what you see, what you object to, but how would you like it to be different? And it doesn't have to be necessarily from a policy perspective. We've talked about that as well. This is more, I want democracy, please and thank you. I want rule of law. Yes, that would be lovely. I would like us to follow the Constitution. Isn't that a great idea? So this reiterating, some people are like, what are you talking about? Well, that's because they don't know what's going on or they don't understand the Constitution. I mean, I think for a lot of people, that whole Constitution thing is like, ew, I heard that in school. I don't want, I don't even want to have anything to do with that. But it's really creating the framework for how we live our lives. And so it's this blueprint that isn't just some stale scholarly forced down your throat thing in school. It's a way of living. And that's what we want, part of what we want to restore here is this way of living that's more equitable, more loving, more open-hearted, more consistent, less split between the haves and the have-nots, everyone being subject to the rule of law. Like, this is aspirational, but also a valid, solid, factual way of being in the world. I just feel like it's almost, I would never have said the Constitution was inspiring. I did think of it as a dry document, but now I think of it as, oh, like this is the frame for going forward. This is something that we can build our lives around doing. I mean, of course, it's a living document too. It can be amended and so on. But if it can help us funnel towards this new tomorrow, yay. I mean, I'll take it.
Well, and if you go back to 1789, in a way it was aspirational, not necessarily what did Ben Franklin say? It's a republic if you can keep it. So there's this sense that we do have to it's alive, and we do have to adjust with what's happened in the past several centuries. But that sense of knowing what we want to see. Yeah, we can know what we want to push against, and we're certainly pushing. But that other side of keeping that image in mind of what it is we want, because it comes from this place of caring about people. It comes from this place of love. It comes from this place of every person matters. And that shouldn't be radical, especially in religious communities. But for some reason, it's a radical concept in some circles. But knowing that what we're going for is love, and keeping in that frame of love. Love is a miracle. Whenever I have felt love and notice it, it feels like the greatest miracle ever. It's amazing. And wouldn't I want that for every person, to feel loved and to love? Because if you feel that, some of the people in charge now seem like wounded children who were not loved. And if every human on the planet felt love, this world would be a very different place.
That's so well said. And equity would be less of an issue as well. Because if we see everyone as having value and everyone being part of this whole tapestry of what we're looking at here, there'd be so much less division. There'd be so much less split in terms of how much money people have or don't have. I mean, I can't imagine being a billionaire and not looking around and going, oh, there's some people here that could use some help. Like, and that just seems strange to me. It's almost incomprehensible to me where you could think, well, I need billions and they need nothing. It just, but if we have a government that appropriately taxes those who have billions, we can do something about this. Like those of us who have this idea of love, this idea of expansion, this idea of inclusion, that people, every person deserves to have a decent living. Every person deserves to have food on their table, shelter, all the things, that this is not, it's not okay. We don't believe it's okay to have people suffering unnecessarily. We can do something about it. And why wouldn't we if we had the opportunity to do it? If I had $1 trillion, I would have so much fun going here and here and here. Let me pass this out. Here, oh, I see something else. And hopefully the people who know what to do with it would do something appropriate. But the fact that people who are creating this new future are leaning into the idea of everyone being worth investing in is so exciting for me. I love this idea that we're going to go from, presumably, this idea of marginalized people to people being included and heard, seen, heard, supported, welcomed. Oh, this is like nirvana in a lot of ways. And that is sort of a miracle. Just envisioning a better world. And the more of us that envision it and hold it, it's like holding the energy together of what we want and how we want it and how we want people to be honored. That is a force.
Yeah. And once you start talking about specifics, and it's like, well, immigrants, this is what immigration should be, it becomes you get mired in the details. And we are not at the place right now where we need the details. We need the concepts. We need the essence of what it is we're going for, the essence of care, the essence that everyone matters. And if there is this what aboutism, what about this? Well, shouldn't we have the wall? Shouldn't we have protection? It's like, we're not saying that is not true. There is nothing about what was said that would negate having policy discussions at some future point, because that's necessary to get down to the nitty gritty. We are not at the nitty gritty point right now. We are at who are we in this moment? And how do we take what we are and what we want and bring that out to other people to get more people inspired to build this world of love, this world of care, this world of equity?
Well, it's interesting in one of the comments talking about in Heather Cox Richardson's newsletter today, she mentioned a quote from 1883 where someone said, what do the social classes owe to each other? Nothing. And so this has been a long existing problem. This is why we have legislation,
Yes.
because people are not always well behaved. People are not always coming from a heart-centered place. But if the heart-centered people become the majority and set some structure in place, some guidelines and so on, most of which we already have in place, it's just not being honored, then that sets it up for most people to be able to just behave normally, and those who behave on the fringes will be pulled back to where correction is taken, and this is not allowed. Just like the whole thing with all the foodborne illnesses that are in the US right now, because they got rid of so many of the people that are inspectors and so on. Most people want their food to be safe. Just saying. Having inspectors to help do that, it benefits everyone. No one wants explosive diarrhea. No, it's obvious. But the things we want, and Joanne and Heather Cox Richardson talk about this all the time, are pretty much in common in terms of we want to feel safe. We want to be able to eat our food and drink our water and breathe our air. We want to have national parks. There's like so many things that are, again, at a policy level, but they are heart-based things of we want to feel held by the container that we're in and not like bombarded by the container we're in, like, can I eat this? I don't know. And that is part of this creation that we're looking at, or it's recreation. We had a lot of this already in place, but putting the sort of container around this, or reestablishing some sort of container around this, so that we no longer feel at peril. And love is the opposite of fear. The more we're having to fear our food, the less we're going to have available for love. You know?
Well, and it's recreating part of what we had, but we're building it back in a way that hopefully will correct the issues of the past, the issues of racism and classism and who has it, and that we worship people with money rather than we worship. Well, we shouldn't be worshiping people. We should be honoring people and caring for them and allowing people to be their best selves and to grow into whatever they can grow into, so that they're not eating lead paint chips or surrounded by soot, which hurts development. Let's make this a safe country and a safe world for everyone, regardless of where they came from, regardless of what they look like, regardless of who they worship, so that all can thrive. So we want to build it back in a way that lives more up to the ideals that were specified in the Declaration of Independence. We want this to be a place where all people are created equal and treated equally and given the opportunity to thrive.
Right. The othering is rampant and brutal and unnecessary. And this is part of the wound that we're healing. At least we hope we are. It was so fascinating watching that conversation with Abdul Al-Sayed, with the former Trump voters, some of them, because most of them were saying how skeptical they were of him. And by the end of the conversation, they all were going to vote for him. And that was so, I mean, I've got chills. That was so inspiring to me because they were asking him about policy things, but he may not have said exactly what they wanted to hear about those policy things, but they could tell he cared. They could tell he was invested. And one of the things he said was, my biggest loss, is to paraphrase, my biggest failure would not be failing to win the primary, but to win everything and fail to help make things better. Mm. Oh, like that's the kind of person we want. We want fighters, and we want people with heart, and people who care, and people who want to make a difference. And that kind of representation brings us the kind of future we want to have, the kind of future that represents most decent human beings who are not fans of the othering. Like, oh, we blame the immigrants for this. We blame them. Don't have a job. We blame the immigrants. Don't have good healthcare. Blame the immigrants. Like all the immigrants thing becomes this like repeated refrain, and it's not factual. So to come back to people who are factual and who are loving and who have a vision for a better future, this is where our miracle comes, I think. Our self-generated miracle, if you will.
I would say it's twofold. It's self-generated. We want to keep taking action. Even the ones that feel small to us may be huge to someone else. But I also say that love is a miracle. And the more we lean into that, we don't know what's possible. We don't know what tomorrow brings, but we know that with love and in love and through love, tomorrow looks can look pretty good.
Absolutely. It's kind of a cliche, but love is the answer. And not in a pat kind of way, but in a transformative kind of way. That it really takes us from a place of smallness to a place of expansion, to a place of connection, to a place of transcending the things that we humans fear, and allows us then to make this better future that we talk so much about.
And so staying in love truly is the miracle. And with that, let's put that love into action together.
Together. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
Bye.